And under the law, I'm sorry again to interrupt, but under the law, those kinds of adverts or contributions to campaigns are not calculated as part of
the candidate's cost. No, they are not calculated as part of the candidate's cost, because there is also a limit as to what individuals can contribute to a campaign. It's very clear from the Electoral Act. So it becomes a little more difficult for us to track those campaign finances. That is why not long ago we had some discussion with the EFCC, particularly on the area of big-time expenditure. They have the capacity and they have the legal backing to track finances. And so we pleaded with the EFCC to help the Commission track some of the big expenditure that we simply have no capacity to track. But related to that, and it's a big source of worry to the Commission, is brazen use of money at polling units on election day. I've said this over and over again. Ours must be a democracy of the people, for the people, by the people, not a plutocracy for those who have money to buy the votes. So we noticed that in some of the recent elections we conducted, some people went to the polling units with money to bribe voters on election day. We are going to respond by collaborating further with the security agencies. But for us, as an immediate area of response, is to re-examine the administration of the polling units. Because sometimes from the way you place the voting cubicle, where citizens thumbprint the ballot papers in secret, and the place where you position the ballot box into which the ballot papers are dropped, may now create that kind of opportunity for those who compromise with those who wish to buy their votes to indicate which party they have voted for so that they can be settled. We'll do that. But it's a violation of the law for citizens to either indicate which party they have voted for, or for those who have money to go and influence the voters on election day. But at the same time, it is also a marker of the improvement of the process. Now the votes are increasingly counting in elections. Nobody has any guarantee that whatever you do with voters before election day will influence their decisions at the polling units. And that's why they are following them to the polling units with cash to ensure that they
what they promised is what they eventually actually do.
Get. But I also want to say that we are looking into this. Our commitment to Nigerians is to ensure that the votes count. And I'm happy to say that increasingly, not only in Nigeria, but in many developing democracies, elections are increasingly going beyond the capacity of electoral commissions to manipulate. The votes cast by Nigerians will determine who eventually becomes their representative at any level of the elections. And this is our commitment. So whatever we need to do between now and the general elections to ensure that, learning from the experience of tracking campaign finances, tracking candidate expenditure, and also ensuring that the issue of money at polling units is completely eliminated, we will do so. I also pleaded with the Inspector General of Police if he can also collaborate further with the Commission to have a special squad at the polling units to ensure that only those who have legitimate reason to be at the polling units are the polling units. And we'll enforce that very strictly, beginning with some of the by-elections that we'll conduct very soon, arising from the vacancies in some of the senatorial seats, a federal constituency and a state constituency in Taraba State, and in the two major elections before 2019, the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections.
Now, one conundrum, and of course you can correct me if I'm wrong, one conundrum that anybody sitting in your chair faces is that even though the body which you head is the Independent National Electoral Commission, the independent part of it is always subject to debate. And that is because, one, your appointment is made by the president, who is one of those who you are supposed to referee during an election. Second is that you are completely reliant on the executive arm of government for the timely release, if at all it is, of funds to do all these processes that are involved in ensuring free, fair, and credible elections. How do you tackle it? I look up in your office and I see pictures of all your predecessors. And I know that at some point they have been faced with the same dilemma. Now you talked about the continuous voters registration. You have only a limited amount of funds. There was what you wanted to do, but because the funding wasn't there, you had to take another option. Now, does that really make you independent?
Well, I think there is need for some clarification. The independence comes from the integrity of election managers. It's not necessarily drawn from statutory provisions. I have been under no pressure since I came here from any quarters to do what is wrong, and I will never do what is wrong. Secondly, yes, the president appoints, but it's, I think, better to say the president nominates. If you look at the constitutional processes for appointing the commission, first, the president has to consult with the National Council of State. The National Council of State is made up of all the governors, 7 presiding officers of the National Assembly, the former chief justices of the Federation, the former presidents and heads of states. So there is a process of consultation with Nigeria. Then it's submitted to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly screens the candidates and then submits their recommendations to the president, who swears the commission in. However, the process of removing the commission is also very clearly defined by law. Is by 2/3 majority of the 2 chambers of the National Assembly, or by way of resignation, voluntary resignation, or in the case of ill health, which is an obvious thing, by resignation by ill health. So I think there are sufficient safeguards in the law. The independence is what you make of that independence. But since I assumed duty on the 9th of November 2015, I have been under no pressure from any quarters at all. And this commission will never yield to pressure from any quarters. All my life, I have been a university lecturer. So I jokingly tell my colleagues here that I have a job to go back to. It's the only job I've applied in my life. So we'll continue to do whatever we are required to do according to law, and courageously as well. On finances, we haven't suffered any encumbrances so far. Of course, yes, our wish is that we have a lot more resources than what is available. But again, the nation doesn't have all the resources to provide anybody for anything anyway. So we are doing our best under the circumstances. We'll continue to remain independent. We'll continue to jealously guard our independence because, as I said earlier, the integrity of an election begins with the credibility of the election managers. This INEC will never compromise for any reason. We are committed to Nigerians, and the commitment is total. Only the votes cast by Nigerians will determine who wins an election in this country.
Professor Yakubu, I can only wish you the very best of luck as you continue the preparations.
Thank you.
And you conduct the elections.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.